Eric, what's wrong with political correctness? Right. Doesn't it mean that I just not allowed anymore to hurl racial epithets of people outside in my white van? You know, isn't that what
your comedy career is over?
Right,
mate.
right.
No.
Well,
Isn't that what political correctness is?
Well, I think, as you and I probably know, the devil is always in the details. That if political correctness means don't call a black person the N-word, you know, we're all for political correctness. It's when you define racism in an expansive way, right? So it's when you say, if you're in class reading from a 19th century text where someone used the N-word, that you are essentially the same thing as using the N-word yourself. I mean, that's kind of ridiculousness of expanding. Or when you say, if you're against affirmative action, you are as bad as someone in the Jim Crow South. You know, so that's sort of... So that's really, I think, what we mean by political correctness is expanding the
Overreach is what you're talking about.
Yeah, overreach, sort of this elasticity and bending of what Orwell said, you know, 2 + 2 = 5, and not only will you agree to that, but you will be made to believe it. I mean, this essential, when the meaning of words becomes political and not what ordinary people, how they categorize things in a social scientific way, which is based on, you know, the scientific method, which is to do with measurement and clusters of differences. And that's how we categorize the world. If it instead is about, no, this is racism is what I say it is, right? So this is right. But what this then means is the expansion of concepts like harm and racism and sexism and so on means that more and more people are, you know, we could talk about British politics, for example, if you say that this whole issue about the Windrush, which was about essentially administrative error and not, you know, mess-ups at the Home Office, but which was not racially motivated, but which subsequently people like Clive Lewis and Afua Hirsch and a number of these commentators are very quick to try and identify that as racism, right? So this broad brush approach, but what that does actually is there's been about 4 experiments which show quite clearly, and there's, you know, I've actually done one of these studies myself, whereas if you take the same statement and you call it racist, you will get a blowback in public opinion. People react negatively to that, particularly conservative type voters. We know from the public opinion research, for example, that, you know, most white Trump voters are actually fairly warm towards African Americans and Hispanics. You know, it's not that they are they're not cool towards those groups. They're just not as cool towards white people as white liberals are. That's the difference, right? So,
Are you saying white liberals have got a problem with white people, Eric? Cancel the interviews. Done.
right.
So this is fascinating, because this is the reason we love talking to you and Matt and other people, because you've actually done work on this. You're not just talking about it on Twitter. You've actually done the research. And what you're really saying is that if you expand these concepts of harm done by words, what that creates is pushback from people who go, fuck you, I'm not racist. You know what I mean? And that then creates the polarization that we see, which then leads to election results that we see. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So you get 2 things. Like in the Trump case, hostility to political correctness was second. I mean, in the work I've done on both the Republican primary vote, but also the switchers in the general election, that this hostility to political correctness, next to wanting immigration controlled and reduced, that seemed to be the second most important factor.
Just pause there. I mean, that's incredible.
It is a massive.
That is incredible that people care about restriction of speech,
right,
and being mislabeled as something they're not, almost as much enough for that to be the primary issue in their choice for the leader of the free world, as they say. That is quite an incredible thing. Yeah,
it is an incredible thing, and it has, you know, and there's been a number of experiments where I think in one case they were talking about taking down Confederate statues or something, and they said that this is a bad policy, and then the next time they said, well, we don't want this policy because it's racist, or maybe the wall was the example. And in all these cases, you could see that when they threw the term racist in there was a lot more resistance to the statement, right? So a number of these experiments have kind of found that there's this direct reaction amongst a chunk of voters. Another.